Hey friend, welcome to Healthy with Heather Brown. If you don't know where to start with balancing being healthy and loving the life you already have, I got you, friend. And yes, of course, we're still going to enjoy some Chick-fil-A. I'm here to come alongside you and encourage you to fall more in love with your creator, your spouse, your kids, and your own health journey. We'll talk about how to let your good things grow until they become daily habits, with the occasional dad joke and point of view from my Yankee hubby, Eric. Don't stress. Let's hop on this Hot Mess Express together. So join me, Heather Brown, as we unpack what it looks like to live a life well loved. Oh my gosh, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Healthy with Heather Brown. So excited to be joining you guys for a little bit different episode this time. I'm so excited not only to be here with my favorite guest ever, Eric Brown, my hubby, but also with one of my very, very dear friends, Brendt, and her husband, Andy. Not only are they some of our favorite couple that we look up to, they have a really strong foundation in the Lord. They're parents of 4 kids. They have an incredible, strong just foundation that we truly look up to. They're also our neighbors, which is super cool. And I just want to welcome and introduce Brendt and Andy Blank. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
How's it going?
That was a really sweet introduction.
She's Brendt. She's
Right.
Brendt, right? I'm Andy. I know that can be confusing. No.
It is fun to be hanging out with y'all tonight.
Yeah, that was a very gracious introduction. We feel the same about you guys.
Mhm.
Well, thank you. And if you guys have followed, Brendt also has a social media following, which Brendt, I'll get into a little bit with you in a minute. It's called SheGaveItAGo.com. But she and Andy actually also have a podcast, and they have hosted Eric and I before on the Big Full Fun podcast.
That's right.
Yep.
So you guys share with everybody a little bit about what you do, your kids, their ages, just kind of give everybody a general introduction for y'all.
My name is Brent, and as you mentioned earlier, we have 4 kiddos. So we go all the way. We just had a freshman start college this year.
It's the first year.
First year at Auburn. So a little shout out War Eagle,
War Eagle.
for all the Auburn fans.
That's right.
And we've got number 2 going next year. So we've got back-to-back girls headed to college. And then we've got a freshman and then a 3rd grader. So we
Sweet
span
Paul.
10 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Little guy. Three girls and a boy. So
3 girls and a boy. And as you said, Heather, we're here in Birmingham. We're just, a 5-minute walk to each other's houses. So wish we could see each other more, but it is really nice being this close. I run She Gave It a Go, founder She Gave It a Go, and it is a website. I do blogging like Heather, content creation, the whole 9 yards, specifically mostly like in the home decor world, but also love to talk about faith and family and lifestyle, all kinds of different things, but mainly in the home decor niche. So did I say all that right?
you did.
Andy's always like, you need a good elevator speech.
That was good. It was a long elevator ride. That was to the top floor. That was good.
I liked it. And then Andy, tell us a little bit about you. So Brent alluded to that she works faith in. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you do and what you have done in the past.
My background has been in ministry, but I've done ministry a bunch of different varieties for 20 something years, but entrepreneurial there, started a couple different ministry organizations with some friends. And so still plugging into both of those. One's a youth ministry organization, one's adult. Both are publishing companies, so and events. So I do that, and then I preach and write and teach. And then I help Brendt when She Gave It a Go. So we work together on that. Started to do more and more there in terms of just content creation with her and different platforms. Right. And so it's fun. It's contagious. I love helping her out. So doing more and more of that.
Yes. Eric, are you taking furious notes from Andy? Are you ready to jump in with My Life Full Love?
That's right.
Help Heather out more.
That's right. More. That's right.
I think
That's
video
right.
editing is on the top of her list of skills she wants me to develop.
I've heard the same from her. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Too great. Well, Andy, what has it been like for on your end and then on Brent's end? How long have you guys been married and what does it look like transitioning to starting to work together? Because that's quite the change up.
Yeah, we've been married, 23 years in March.
That's right.
We
got married in 2000.
So I
it's
can always
easy
remember.
to remember.
That's right.
So we can just trace it back to March of 2000. I know.
I think Eric can probably say the same thing. I mean, we've always, even though Brendt she gave it a go is hers, right? I've always helped behind the scenes with what limited knowledge I have and, websites and content creation and marketing, all that stuff. This is a little different because we're for the first time this is 6 years for you of doing She Gave It a Go.
Yeah. I think
we're actually meeting together and like brainstorming ideas and thinking about new things that we can work on together that she hasn't really been able to expand into just for bandwidth purposes, right? Not from skill set, but it's like, so I'm actually laughing. Eric, you were saying help Heather more. I think my goal in this new season is like, what can I do to actually help Brent maybe be more efficient so she can work less, actually be more productive and profitable. And so, those are fun conversations to have.
Mm-hmm. Definitely putting both of our heads together on all that.
Well, everything that you're saying, I'm like, Eric is so good at efficiency. I mean, we constantly we joke about like the refrigerator. I'm not very efficient with the refrigerator. I'm like, man, if he got a close look at my business, he'd be like, oh my gosh, your business is like the refrigerator. We got a lot of refining to do here.
That's me.
It's different skill sets, it's different temperaments, and it allows y'all to be so good at the world y'all live in, which requires so many different, lanes that you operate in so well. And sometimes those skills aren't always like applicable to like details.
It takes a lot of different skills,
It does.
and it's really what I think we're probably drawn to those things that we feel most comfortable with.
Yeah.
And so when Andy's hopping in, it's probably things that I've not necessarily felt like maybe I could do or handle, just different types of content creation. We're not trying to be like vague, but just anything from more writing or more speaking or more coaching and those type of things that I just, probably need a little like kick to go. Like let's
technical. I like to build things, so websites and platforms, landing pages. I mean, I love editing and videos and stuff like that. Like that she could do. That's not her. Right. That's not her sweet spot. So I think it's just like any good marriage. You round each other out. So it's just been fun to be in a sort of a new environment because I did step away from the day-to-day of one of the organizations I founded so that we could do more of this. And so it's been fun. It's been a good time.
I think, Heather, you asked what it's like working together, and the more and more that we're seeing that come, I guess, about where the hours are increasing working together and all of our time spent, that I think we've had to also learn that even though we're seeing each other day to day and we're having all these business conversations, you really do have to be very protective. That's not all that we are. And I think that's one thing that we are learning very quickly. Like if we go on a date night, which I know y'all treasure too, it cannot be all about what's our next venture. And that's fine sometimes if that's the goal of it. But we really try hard to make sure that there's still more to us than just our business, because it can creep up and kind of take over you. And so, we got to put up guardrails on that. So,
yes, I think that's such wise advice, you guys. And a lot of this season has been about kind of protecting your mental health and what those boundaries look like. And so we're very excited to dig into that with you guys as couples. And I would even say, like, this is kind of taking a little bit of a lighter note, actually. But I was going to say, so Eric, I'm also going to put you on the spot with this one. But obviously with like Brent and I's role and what we do, content creation definitely has some kind of like crazy, like bloggers in the wild type stories, So what would you say, Andy and Eric, it is like to be a quote unquote like blogger husband, even though I don't like that term, but do you have any funny stories that you can share with the audience?
I'm trying to answer the first part of that question of what it's like to be a blogger's husband. I don't really think of it honestly like that. Like you said, Brent, it's your thing. And I think Andy and I are just here to help in any way that we can. I think one of my biggest things, kind of talking about guardrails and protection of our family as well, too. I know you do a really good job of protecting our family. That's always in the back of your mind, but it's definitely always in the back of my mind as well, too. So I think that's one thing that I kind of bring to it a little bit is more of that. Where are those boundaries at? How do we protect our family? Not just like from a security standpoint, but also just from a balance standpoint of, let's not focus all of our time and attention. Like you guys mentioned on your date nights, can't just be about business, bring it back to just us, our relationship. And we've always said that if we put our relationship first, it's going to be the best thing for our family. It's going to be the best thing for our kids. It's going to be the best thing for our business. It's going to be the best thing, holistically for our family.
Absolutely.
I think there's been some funny stories like over the years, like
I'm not sure where he's going to go with this.
No, it's more like, I remember there was a company that we had worked with a couple times, and like I'm putting together furniture, and it's the worst furniture. Like I can't even put it together. It's just junk. I'm going, we can't. And she's like, I know. We just got to get this one done right early on, right? It's like we were just getting started, and you couldn't be picky. I was like, we can't do this. So you phase them out, but little things like that.
Smart move.
Like
smart move.
like
Just push through.
But I know you, Heather, and I know Brent, and y'all do such a good job at protecting families, like Eric says. And you see some people in this space, and you're like, man, is there anything private? Like, are their kids like a prop for them 24/7? You do a very good job, but there's been moments, right? Like, I mean, there's been moments where it's like
phone away.
Or like I remember we were like playing like with a train or something. One day I was putting something together that Paul had. But it was really stressful, right? It was like going into Christmas, busy time of the year, grinding through content. And like, I couldn't get this thing put together. And like, Paul and I were trying to figure it out. And you kept trying to take pictures of it. I was like, hey, like, I'm about to go crazy. I can't put this thing together. So like, just step over there. We're going to do this. And like, when we get it done, but
it'll happen.
Those are so rare. I mean, mostly it's just getting used to rhythms and a different workflow,
So true. So true.
So, Andy, that's a very wholesome story. My story takes place in Costco. I don't know if this happens to you, Andy, but
I don't know what's coming.
Every once in a blue moon, somebody will recognize me as Heather's husband. Doesn't happen very often, but every once in a while it will happen. And it's happened once before. It's happened twice at Costco, actually. One time somebody came up to me and was like, hey, are you Heather's husband? And I was like,
who's asking?
Yeah. Why do you ask?
I was like, yes, I am. And we had a nice conversation. The second time, I did not realize that somebody saw me at Costco. And this was at 10 o'clock in the morning. I was on my off day. And the only reason why I went to Costco was to go to the liquor store at Costco.
Yeah, sure. Discount liquor.
I was literally coming out of Costco with 2 handles of vodka,
Sure.
one handle of gin. I think this was actually at the beginning of COVID. I'm almost sure it was.
It was.
So when everybody was just stocking up, for 2 weeks to slow the spread, guys, let's get it.
Flatten the curve. Yeah.
Flatten the curve and do our part. I might want to ask y'all's opinion on that later on.
Oh, gosh.
Those were your 2.
COVID, all bets were off at COVID.
Yeah.
So true.
No big deal. It's 10 a.m. in the morning. I'm making my liquor run at Costco.
With our 3-year-old at the time, I think.
No. I was by myself.
Oh, you were by yourself. Okay, I thought you had been.
Redeemed.
Yeah, he was.
I have some standards. Anyways, so later that day, Heather gets a message from a follower. It was like, hey, I think I saw your husband at Costco. And I was like, when did she see me? Because I actually did go to the main Costco first, and I made 2 runs. I made the first run out to the car with the groceries. Then I made the second run to the liquor store, and I was like, oh my gosh, when did she see me? Please let it be groceries and not liquor.
The first run?
Which one was it?
It was the second run.
It was the liquor one.
She's like, are y'all okay?
Is everything okay with your family?
You're just like, we're having a big party. We're having a big quarantine party tonight. I know it's against the rules.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was one of my funny stories.
That was funny.
I've never been recognized, but you have been recognized by some really interesting people. I think the most unusual was at the car wash here in town.
Oh.
An African-American male. I mean, like a 35-year-old.
Like falling in your typical,
not your stereotypical. I mean,
right,
most of 99% of her audience is female.
Right.
But like a 35-year-old, 40-year-old African-American male, like walks through and he's like, wait a minute, she gave it a go? She's like, what? Like, what? What world are we in? But it just turns out that he likes decor as well. So there you go.
I love it. That's precious. Let's talk, you guys, shifting gears a little bit about the common misconception that people have when they say like, oh, well, you have this perfect platform. You share content about your family life, your marriage. You must be perfect. Your marriage must be perfect. Your kids look perfect. So how do you guys find that balance of being loyal and private and also honest and relatable, setting an example of 2 imperfect people working together on a relationship that they value?
I know Brett's going to say that I am perfect. And I know.
Obviously, 10 out of 10.
You don't have to say that.
Right. We'll start there.
That is your nickname, right, Andy? Mr. Perfect?
Yeah. I mean, just kind of goes without being said. Just, I'll just say that.
You do favor Jesus a little bit with the beard. So.
I know.
Right.
A little bit right here.
With that beard these days. I know.
How we answer that?
I guess I'd want to start first, maybe just my audience is familiar that, faith is in our lives. You can't separate She Gave It a Go, our family, from our faith. And so I think if we start there, we can all admit that belief states that we're all sinners. We're not perfect.
Yeah.
We all fall short every single day, and that we need the Lord for grace and mercy and love and the strength to face the days. And so I guess there's always kind of this undercurrent of faith saying, I can't do this on my own. There's no way I'm doing this on my own. There's no way we can parent on our own or run our jobs. So I hope that would be the foundation with which I try to approach my audience, that it is our faith that keeps us going. We need him. We have to have him. We're grounded in him. And if our faith's not going well, then we struggle. And even though, as I was saying at the very beginning, the niche would be more home decor, if you dig just below the pictures, the hope is that you see just the encouragement that our faith gives us, and that as we approach life, we have that, we cling to that. And I mean, Andy and I were saying earlier that we do try to be very genuine, and we try to show that families, we value trying to be intentional and loving and kind. We fail at that sometimes. I mean, I just think that comes with knowing that we're just a normal person. I don't think we have to show all of our imperfections to everybody. Am I explaining that right? I mean, I feel like
I think there's a way that there's a tone that some people
may take on it, right?
I want to say I guess that's okay to say between four of us, like in our worlds, right? The world that you guys operate in. It's almost like, look at my flaws. Look how relatable I am. I haven't packed my kids' lunch in 3 days. And it's like, there's a certain point where you're like, yeah, I get that, right? More than anything, it's just like, I think social media, especially in the world we live in right now, in this cultural moment, just something that's positive and joyful and happy,
right?
It's so meaningful to people.
Speak more
and so,
loud.
I mean, definitely the undercurrent is we're all saved by grace, and apart from Christ, we're flawed. But I think it's more about just like that. I want to project positivity and hope and encouragement because we need it right now in our culture so much, know?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you guys do a great job of that as well. Really projecting that a hopeful, positive, and it's not, I don't think any of us are after because we've all had hardship in our lives just recently in the past couple of years, y'all and us. And it's like, it's not sugarcoating. It's just saying we choose joy because of Christ. Our circumstances don't impact our happiness. And so we're going to project that outward to the world, intentionally.
I think it's really hard to describe that feeling or, kind of what you're describing, Andy, but it's almost just, at least for me personally, it's an underlying confidence, that through my faith that, maybe I didn't have. It's a continuous refining process. You mature in your faith and you grow in that, you grow in confidence. But I think that where both Brent and you, Heather, come across is you have that silent confidence, I would say. It's not a phony confidence that sometimes you'll see in social media today where people are, I don't want to say putting on an act, but you can just tell it's just that underlying, just that little bit of self-doubt, or almost like you said, people always trying to almost too much these are my faults. I am so relatable, just pointing it out as opposed to just letting it be and people seeing it in your life and being authentic. That's the biggest thing, authenticity and encouragement. People want that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And you guys do an amazing job of that on the She Gave It a Go account and on your podcast. So super proud of you guys for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Eric, you brought a question for the blanks, didn't you?
I did. I had a couple random questions.
We love a good random Eric question moment. So buckle up, guys.
Hey, Eric asks the best ones when we go out to dinner. I love really Eric's questions.
He does.
So with you guys having 3 girls and 1 boy, would you say that it's more difficult to raise boys or girls nowadays in the culture and the environment that we live in?
I can answer that just
girls,
like that.
Girls.
More difficult.
Yes. Boys are so easy.
So yay for y'all.
I'm going to push back. I haven't raised a girl, but I want to hear I just wanted you to go a little bit deeper. Then I'll tell you kind of my thoughts on why it might be a little bit more difficult to raise boys.
We had a friend of ours, funny and long story. We thought Paul was going to be a girl. Y'all know that. Ultrasound said girl, came out a boy. Great surprise. We thought we were about to have 4 girls.
He's a man child.
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's giant.
He's huge.
I had a friend of mine who's, they're older than us, considerably older than us. Good friends of ours. They have 4 girls. And I remember like kind of joking with Tom. I was like, hey, we're joining a 4-girl club. And he just got this serious look on his face. And he's like, hey, the middle school years are going to be the hardest years of your life. And I was kind of laughing. He's like, no, he's like 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. You're barely going to make it. And then from there, it's easy.
Oh, wow.
He was so right. It's like hormones and we're playing with a broad brush here, right? There's obviously exceptions, but like girls' friendships at that age are really different. You know, boys, you tell a boy a secret and he forgets it.
That's true.
And he would never like think of using that secret. But, you know, girls, it's like those few years, they leverage it so much about.
Yeah.
And it's those dynamics were so hard. And then you come out of it and you're like, and then high school's not that bad.
It's better.
And then when they get older, it's like you relate to them on such different levels. But boys are very easy compared to girls. And it may be because boys in general maybe girls have like a lot more to offer than boys. Maybe men were just a lot simpler. And so it's just
It's a compelling case, Andy. I'll give you that.
a lot of nature versus nurture, right? We're not going to get into developmental psychology here, but
not tonight. I don't think we got time for that.
No.
So I would just say, now obviously we have 2 boys, so I can't speak to girls, and I can only imagine middle school years. Middle school years are tough for boys as well, too, I think. I know personally. I think I weighed 90 pounds in middle school, guys. It was a rough few years for me.
I was too. I was very, very tiny.
But I think in today's environment, in today's culture, there's almost a pushback of letting boys be boys, you know, and letting them just grow up and like have a lot of freedom to make mistakes. I think we do a fairly good job of letting our boys be boys, but you know, encouraging them to be creative, encouraging them to be builders, encouraging them to take risks, you know,
get outside. Yeah.
You know, fall, hurt yourself, you know, these things of this nature. And I think as time goes on, there is almost kind of an attack on boys and that kind of a culture in general, just manhood, you know, and masculinity, I would say.
Yeah.
And it's important to instill those strong values and virtues in our boys, because there's a lot of pushback from the environment and the culture and the media for boys not to be men, you know, or to grow up and become men, you know, and be good leaders and things of that nature.
I think our culture has struggled for so long to define masculinity from a cultural perspective, you know, and like that's always going to be a shifting target, right? I mean, if we I lived in China for a summer and I remember I was there for a few weeks and guys are sitting in each other's laps and holding each other's hands. And I'm like, well, that's not masculine. Well, it is in China. Where do you go to get your definition of masculinity? If you go to Central America, it's hypermasculinity, right? It's that machismo culture. So is that your definition of masculinity? And I think actually faith answers that question perfectly. If we look to the person of Christ and ask the question, how does Christ define masculinity? How does Christ define femininity? If I'm a woman and I look to Christ, what can I model of his life and his teachings as a woman, as a man? And so it speaks to what you're saying, Eric. Like we don't typically associate, you know, passion and commitment with manliness, but Christ was passionate. He was deeply committed and he was sacrificial and he was bold. And it's like, I actually think where faith has come under attack, we say God made male and female. I actually think the perfect definition of masculinity and femininity is found in the gospel. If we would just embrace, you know, what the model that Jesus has set out for us. We can talk about that a lot.
Well, I was going to say, Andy, do you mind actually sharing a little bit about your venture? I feel like that's like people that are interested in this topic would love to know about that. Do you mind?
Been in youth ministry for forever. Youth ministry publishing events company called Youth Ministry 360. Started that in 2010. And then a few years ago, about 6 years ago, we spun off a men's ministry platform. And it was just basically that doing youth ministry. And then we had some friends of ours who were doing like men's ministry and realizing that, especially in boys, I was doing ministry with boys for years. And these are Christian guys whose dads are Christian men. And we just realized that they didn't know what it meant to invest in their sons. They were always at the ball field, you know, always at the hunting club. But mom kind of did the relational and the spiritual stuff. And, you know, the biblical picture of that is a mom and a dad, you know, Proverbs over and over again. It's, you know, where you're the teaching of your mother and your father, like a garland around your neck. I mean, it takes two parents to speak into the life of a child. And what we were realizing was just like a lot of men, even church men, don't know how to do that. And then you look at all the statistics about faith. A little under 30% of Christian women, married Christian women, go to church without their husband. So 1 in 3 married Christian women go to church without their husband most Sundays. Church pews are about 65% women. There's a faith issue there. And so one of the things we try to do is just really through curriculum and books and events and stuff like that. It's called Iron Hill Press. And we just try to challenge men and equip men to really kind of take ownership of that, of the many roles that God's called them to be sacrificial leaders in the home and to partner with mom to raise, spiritually invest in their sons and daughters, which a lot of men don't know how to do. We've been doing about 6 years or so, and that's one of my many side hustles. I don't know which is the main hustle anymore. I don't know. I don't know what the main hustle is.
Coming over here.
Yeah, I don't know. Some days it is.
Well, I think that's really cool. And I'll definitely make sure to link that in the show notes for anybody that's interested. That's because it's an amazing resource and tool. And I think Christian families are just hungry for resources like that right now. And Brent, one thing that we didn't share about your background is that you actually were a counselor for many years. Was it specifically in family counseling? Is that right?
Correct. It's funny you asked that. I was talking with somebody earlier today that was like, "You were a what?" And I'm like, "I know, for many years." A marriage and family therapist. I practiced just in kind of a variety of settings over the years.
Clinical
16
and private
years
practice.
maybe. And most recently was at Children's Hospital in Alabama, working with the cardiac patients. Eric, you're familiar with that?
Yes.
And the needs that are involved with the intensity of heart illness and, just the mental, all the emotions that come with that. But though I missed parts of it, it was very clear. And, we don't have time today, but it was a strong call to start this and leave that work. But there is a group here in Birmingham, Lifeline Services. I think they're outside of Birmingham. But anyway, they are a foster care and adoption agency. So I still get to go help volunteer and lead some groups with them and talk about mental health and healthy relationships. So that part that I really loved, that teenage group environment, all of that, I still get that.
You give me a lot of free therapy.
I do. There you go. Brent gives me a lot of free therapy too.
Some of it I even asked for.
I know. Well, hey, there you go. Voluntary.
So everybody gets free. That's pretty cheap to have it all free. So.
That's right. So Brent, will you talk, and Andy too, just a little bit about what y'all's guidelines have come? Because I do feel like mental health is becoming more and more of a topic that everybody's talking about. And I do feel like social media plays into that a lot. What have been kind of the guidelines and the boundaries that you have found works well for your family when it comes to social media and screen time?
We're pretty specific, especially when the kids are young.
So for the children, we put, I guess, like
we use all the parental tools that Apple can offer. Like we take advantage of all of them. We use those parental tools. Studies show the kind of the tipping point in mental health for teenagers, and you can look this all up. There's multiple studies have shown this. It's really kind of about that 5-hour a day mark. If you can keep your kids to kind of less than that, obviously this
is teenagers.
It's not like 40. Yeah, this teenagers. It's 8-year-olds, but it's not like 4:55. We're good, but it's kind of that 5-hour mark. So we don't give them internet browsers on their phone until they're like seniors in high school. They don't need them. They really don't, right? It just opens up. They literally don't need them.
Well, I think Andy's always done a really good job of engaging our children. I think this is, I guess, probably an important part of how we've dealt with this is getting them to explain why something is either beneficial or not. Can you tell me why having whatever social media platform it is, why is that going to be beneficial to you? How do you see yourself using it? What will it be good for? And I think that that's the part where we've had some really good conversations, because if they start to maybe veer off when using it, or maybe you're not using it right, that we kind of come back to, is this a temptation? Do we delete off your phone? Do you need us to put boundaries, like our boundary on this, so that
which
you're
we
not
do kind of anyway.
Right.
But every kid's different. Like our oldest daughter, I don't think she minded us telling you this, like she had some slip ups, I think, kind of early on with social media. And one time she actually kind of caught herself. She's like, hey, I think I said something I should have said and I feel bad about it. So I'm like, okay, teachable moment. Our middle daughter couldn't care less. She just doesn't spend a lot of time. And our youngest daughter has had some goofs there. Like she currently doesn't have any social media and she may not for a while, right? It's different, right? It's playing roles of freedom, right? Like expand, like you start here And social media and a phone is not a right, it's a privilege, right?
Amen.
Yeah, right. It's a privilege. And you do this with it. And the better you are with it, following the rules, being like, it just expands, right? And then all of a sudden, maybe you can follow some boys on Snapchat, right? If you've done really well with just following your friends for a year or so. If you don't, that circle shrinks back, and so it's this constant kind of give and take, ebb and flow. Every kid's different, but you have to stay on top of it. The device belongs to us. It's ours. And so you're not going to lock us out, right? Like, we're going to know your password. I'm going to have my face on your Face ID, right? And it lives on our bedside table until you're a senior in high school, right? Like every night, 9:30.
We're not still
well, but I mean, with our youngest right now, she's on a really good run, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is about that freedom that's expanding. And we lock her phone, goes to bed at 9:30 on its own. So
we're good.
Smart. There you go.
We shut down all the, and everything shuts down. Again, use those parental tools on your phone.
Now, you talked a lot about teenagers, and I know a lot of the moms and families that are on here are probably more so like our kids' age, so young, maybe around Paul's age. What does your boundaries look like with, the kids that aren't teens yet?
Just so legalistic.
That's okay. On devices or whatever.
Legally, you can't have an account until you're 13. So it's so easy for parents.
Oh, yeah. That is easy.
I mean, I just fall back on that. Like, 11-year-old or 10-year-old, you can't have a social media account because you're not 13, right?
It makes it so easy because it also builds. I mean, we're already having, lots of conversations with our older two about alcohol. Well, it's illegal till you're 21.
Yeah,
so it's real easy.
Right?
You can't drink it if you choose to do that until you're 21. So it almost like springboards the conversation of like staying within legal.
I think in general, and this is Brent's background in counseling, my background in youth ministry was very, very much research driven. I love research. I love statistics. I mean, screens are not healthy for us developmentally, period. They're just not. And so as you think about parenting your children, you have to think holistically about screen time. Like, it's not just time on your phone. It's time watching TV, time playing their video games. Like, as parents, it's so easy for us to miss there. Our big word for our parenting, our big word it's the banner that flies over our parenting is intentionality.
I was going to say it's probably the same.
Right?
Oh, I love that. Intentionality,
relentless, all the time. Never give up, never let up. Like, you can't take plays off as a parent. And we have older kids. And so there's things in my daughter that I wish were more developed. And almost all of them I can trace back to us not being as diligent as we should have been at a certain stage in her life, right? You just have to stay on top of it. And I mean,
that's the hard route.
Don't need
that's
screens.
The hard route.
It is. It's not easy. It's not easy.
Totally.
Can I say this real quick? I know we need to move on. Can I say this real quick?
No, please do.
I had this conversation the other day. We had this conversation the other day with a friend of mine, a friend of ours. I was having this conversation with the third friend. Their kids are like 17 and they don't have anything, nothing. Like, they're getting ready to go to college. They've never had social media.
Dang.
And I thought to myself, I kind of thought about it for a second. And in the course of this conversation, I realized I want my kids to make mistakes on my watch. We want to teach our kids discernment. Like, if they screw up, I want to be able to pick them up, show them the consequences for that, but also coach them through it. And if they're never exposed to any of that, it's like, what did the Amish do when they go in their year? Like Rumspringa or whatever. And they all go.
There you go, Rumspringa.
Yeah, so it's like Rumspringa is like freshman year of high school, right? You've never had TikTok before, and so you go crazy.
Great documentary on the Amish, The Devil's Playground.
I've heard of this.
It's very good.
It's all about Rumspringa.
Yeah, so we don't want Rumspringa to happen at freshman year at Auburn when they've never had social media, right? I want that to happen in our house so we can process it, That's right. Put it down. Put down to Rumspringa.
So funny. Well, Eric, I feel like you had another question that you brought for the blanks. Did you?
I did, and I'm debating on whether or not I want to ask this question. I would just say it's kind of provocative, especially with both of y'all's backgrounds. I'm going to ask the question.
Is it racy or provocative? Because we're cool with either one of those.
Provocative. The way I'm going to ask the question, this is just like, I have no agenda with it. And you can take this question in any direction that you want. But
I'm loving this already.
Look at Heather. Heather's like,
I'm like waiting with bated breath, like, oh my gosh.
So, in your opinion, is depression real? The obvious, easy answer is to say, yes, of course it's real. I would agree with it. It is real. But I want to kind of hear more of your thoughts on maybe that question.
So that's very interesting.
Are you going to answer it first?
I'm the debater, so I want to know what your angle is. Like I'm sitting there thinking,
I
what's
know.
Eric?
Well,
what
he's
is
medical.
different?
So I'm sitting there going, of course he knows it's real because he can explain the biological explanation
Well, that's what I
of it
say.
all.
I mean, it's about, serotonin uptake and all that good stuff. And like, the chemicals happening in the brain. Look at him. He's like, I don't know.
I am going to go serious on you, Eric, because of the background I've had in working with people with clinical depression. And so I do believe, especially if anybody's listening to this that has struggled with depression, I do believe because I have watched somebody, I guess I'm seeing it through the lens of hope. So somebody who comes in who is very depressed, and I worked at on a psychiatric unit where people were extremely depressed, and we've had family members who are depressed, that the right treatment through therapy and the right medication, they have gone from a person who is hopeless, not capable of showing signs that they believe life can get better, that there is hope, that there is a life worth living, to finding a life worth living, making meaning out of their pain, getting better. I know I got real serious, but I do think that it is real. And maybe it's because of the more research background that, did I read some research articles on depression in graduate school. I believe what I have read and what I've seen, and I've been told that I do believe it is an illness. Nobody chooses it. That's what I used to tell family members. I'd used to say, they'd say, can you just, help my child be more happy? Can you just help my child get over this hump and not be depressed anymore? And I would say, do you think that they chose, is this really a life that they really want to be in? Or is this something that they may not have control over? So there was a lot of education. What are you thinking about that?
Well, I would answer it a different way. I would say, let's take the medical root of it off the table.
Mm-hmm.
If a person is sorrowful and hopeless and meets the day with a defeated attitude and they're overwhelmed by life and they call that depression, then it's real for them. It's real for them in that moment. Their experiential aspect of it is real. And I would say there's a fairly orthodox view of medicine that says it is chemically based. But even if you take that off the table, like for the individual who feels depressed and not just in a bad mood, right? For the individual who their daily rhythms are impacted by this emotional baggage, I wouldn't say to that person, you're not depressed, because there's no such thing. So you have to acknowledge on some level that people feel that it's a common feeling. I think the interesting thing would be to think about treatment, right?
Yeah.
Some people would say no, never medicine, only therapy. Some people don't believe in therapy, right?
I want to hear from Eric.
Bring it on, Eric Brown.
So
where did this question come from?
Great question, Brent. She's
Yes,
turning the
where did
tables
we
on
get
you.
this question? Now that we've shared our answers.
I'm willing to admit that this was not a completely organic question of my own. So have you guys ever heard of the person Andrew Tate? He's a very big kind of self-help type person. He's very controversial in some of the topics or positions that he takes. And one of the things that he has said is that depression is not real. He actually was recently on with Piers Morgan and they had a conversation back and forth. But I do not agree with a lot of the positions that he takes, but it makes for thought-provoking conversations. So what I would say, as far as depression is concerned, I think you have to separate clinical depression from the feeling of depression. You alluded a little bit to this, Brent. I think nowadays in our society, you mentioned happiness. And I feel like happiness is a very poor way to judge how we feel because it can change so easily. From day to day, our happiness can change. And I think happiness and not being happy can be very easily construed to be depression when maybe it's not actually depression.
Exactly.
Also, to what you had said, Andy, the kind of thing that I am more focused on is the treatment aspect and how do we go about treating depression. Now, I do think there are definitely some cases that medication could possibly help. I encourage you, Brent, to go look up. There's been a recent large study about SSRIs how ineffective they actually are.
Okay, for the non-medical people, SSRI is what?
So it's basically a serotonin reuptake inhibitor.
Uptake
inhibitor, yeah.
Okay.
A reuptake inhibitor.
So there are basically, and I agree, like clinical depression is a chemical imbalance.
Right.
Yep.
But as far as the treatment is concerned, we always thought, and this has been what's thought to be true for the past 20 to 30 years, is that these medications, these SSRIs, are very helpful in basically making that imbalance more balanced. And there's been a recent study that came out that said maybe that's not actually the case. A lot of times, a lot of practitioners have been too easily to prescribe these medications. And I don't think they're doing people the benefits that they were intended to do. And kind of the thing that Andrew Tate talks about a little bit is basically self-control and how we can have positive thinking, which it kind of goes to this whole different thing. He's like basically making himself his own God. And, we can do these things just through the power of will. But I think I and Heather and a lot of us view it as it's actually not ourselves, giving us this power and the strength. There's a higher power that is giving us our strength to overcome this depression or these feelings of insecurity or these different feelings. So I do think depression is real, but I do think it's a very nuanced topic, if you will.
I feel like it's been a topic of debate with people you talk with, people that I used to work with, but it makes for an interesting conversation.
As someone that had postpartum depression and got on medication for it, I would say that the emotions and the feelings and like how I did not feel like myself, like I had never experienced anything like that before in my life. But I also felt like for me to have just had a baby and your hormones, go nuts after you have a baby. I do wonder if my doctor hadn't been so quick to put me on an antidepressant after just 2 weeks for my checkup, if I would have actually leveled out had I have been doing the other therapeutic type stuff that we're talking about. So it's just good food for thought, I think. And I actually just listened to a sermon on laziness and how even people that are the hardest workers, though, you can sometimes be such a hard worker because you're being lazy and either taking care of your health, taking care of your family, pouring into your kids. And I was like, that is so convicting to me. And so I fear that a lot of these people are just so lazy and on their phone and they're getting depressed because of what the phone and everything's doing to their chemicals in their brains too.
I'm a big sleep proponent. Gotta get good sleep. It's one of the most underrated characteristics of your overall health, good sleep.
It's also one of the most important aspects of weight loss. Isn't that interesting? If you're trying to diet and you don't sleep enough, you will not lose weight. Isn't that crazy?
That's the solution.
Yeah, I want to go back real quick. We sleep more. I want to just say real quickly, I do agree with something you said, and I read an article recently that speaks to this, but it was about cancer treatment. And basically it was, as a society, the industrial medical cancer treatment process and industry is so good that nobody is stopping to ask. Very few doctors and patients have the conversation up front end that says, hey, doc, does my cancer need aggressive treatment? Because they're like, so many cancerous tumors are slow growing. And if you're a 70-year-old who has a slow growing tumor, you may never need treatment for it. You may die with it at age 85, but we don't ask those questions. And I think it goes back to, that's kind of what you're saying, with depression, of course, I think we would all agree. I mean, you would be arguing against medical science if you didn't say there's chemical deficiencies that cause clinical depression. Absolutely. Right. But in your background, one way you tell that that's the case is that you don't rush into medication, is that you get with a therapist who tries solutions-focused therapy or cognitive therapy. And you do that for a few weeks and you do that for a few months and you're like, hey, doc, this isn't working. And so then you introduce approach with medicine. I do think there's a tendency in our culture to over-medicate everything, and we're people who, and we all have different opinions on this, we vaccinate our children, but we're not big, none of us take a daily medication. We're not on cholesterol medication. But we're serious about our health. And I mean, there's been times in my life where I'm like, I could probably benefit from an anti-anxiety, but I don't.
Sure.
Solve that other ways, come up with cognitive.
Keep on exercising.
Yeah, cognitive, or just I'll run further, run farther, run more.
Q4, me and Brent would be paying big money for those.
But that is an interesting line of questioning. How do we get there? Was that
Eric?
This is what happens when Eric gets his questions.
Eric, no more questions. No more.
That's your two.
It is.
Wow.
It is. Thanks, friends. Okay, well, we have talked for a really long time because the convo's been so good and because Eric asked such good questions per usual.
He did. He did. I like them.
And you guys bring a lot of wisdom and interesting thought, and we both just look up to you guys so much. We're so grateful you took time to join us as busy parents of 4, entrepreneurs, working multiple businesses. Is there anything else you want to tell our listeners before we head out for tonight?
Date your spouse. You guys do
Date
great
your
with
spouse.
that.
That's
Date
a
your
good
spouse,
word.
right? Like we
Travel
gotta,
together.
we got to put it on the calendar. If we don't, it doesn't happen. We block it out.
Mhm.
Y'all do too.
Mhm.
Amen.
And it's so important.
Mhm.
So important.
That's right.
Brent and Andy, where can they find you on social media?
Don't worry about me.
Your business, all the things. Yeah, so we will link all of Andy and Brent's ventures and Amazons and Facebook, Pinterest, all their things. But thank you guys again so much for joining us. And to the Healthy with Heather Brown.
Y'all are the best. Y'all are the best. We love you guys. Y'all are awesome.
Love you guys too. To the Healthy with Heather Brown crowd, thank you guys so much again for tuning in for this interesting conversation. We would so appreciate if you would screenshot our episode. And how about you post it on Instagram stories, tag at Healthy with Heather Brown and at She Gave It a Go, and let us know what you think about Eric's depression question. We'd love to know. We'll see you next time. Have a great day. Are you freaking out that it's back to school season like me? My gosh. It always comes with so many things that it feels like a part-time job. Not to mention, you have to figure out a lunch plan. If you're on a budget and you really want to think through how to send your kids with lunch that's not just PB&J, I got you, girl. I have painstakingly figured out a system that works to get a healthy, nutritious, budget-conscious lunchbox packed for your kids every single day of the school year. And don't worry, we didn't forget breakfast or dinner either, along with tips from our feeding therapist for how to get even the pickiest eaters to try new things. I've got a list of ingredients, special love notes to put in your kids' lunch boxes, ways to involve your kids, recipe ideas, and everything you need to get an A+ on lunch packing. Head to www.mylifeoflove.com/ebook to grab yours now and use code podcast to get 15% off. Hey girl, hey! If you're loving the show, I would love to hear from you. Please be sure to go on over to your podcast app, scroll down to where it says ratings and reviews, and tell me your thoughts. It really does mean so much. Your words might just be what the next person needs to tune in and start living a healthier life from the inside out. Thanks!